Hey there guys, this is Flamzeron, aka YouTube's Tosuke. Saint Seiya Brave Soldiers has been out for a while, and I've had plenty of time to play it, so I figured I should give a little review on it like I promised I would. Seeing as how Saint Seiya is quickly becoming one of my favorite franchises. Like, I think as far as anime franchises go, it would probably be in second place under Dragon Ball. In video game, I don't really know where it would be, but overall franchise, it's probably in third place, under Tales and Dragon Ball. I'm also going to try something new here. I'm going to throw in some gameplay footage, because you guys should probably get to see the game that I'm reviewing. I mean, it couldn't hurt, so I'm just going to show some gameplay footage while I'm talking about the game. But, yeah, Saint Seiya Brave Soldiers. For the gameplay, if you've played Sanctuary Battle previously, then you'll see a lot of reused assets, the way the characters fight, and of course the music as well. That's probably the biggest gripe that seems to be the biggest gripe that people have with this game who've played the previous ones, is that it reuses a few assets, including voice clips and attacks and music. Save for a few tracks that are actually very nice. For example, the Poseidon music that plays during some cutscenes in the Poseidon arc. It has sort of like this aquatic sound with like little harps and whatnot, like little melodies. I'm not a music person, but it sounds very aquatic, which is nice. And there's a track for the Hades arc as well that sounds very dark and, you know, very hellish and underworldly. So the gameplay, it plays similar to a Naruto game. It's actually very similar to a Naruto game in terms of its perspective. You've got the slight behind-the-shoulder perspective, a lot, kind of like how the Naruto games have been doing lately, as well as the Budokai Tenkaichi games and Raging Blast. But it still plays like a regular Saint Seiya game. It's similar to the Gold Saint fights in Sanctuary Battle, just with a more combo, more technical fighting game battle system. The gameplay, I think, is actually pretty fun. Though one thing that I don't really like is that there doesn't really seem to be any clear way to break a combo, except for this like dash behind thing, similar to the substitute mechanic in the Naruto games. And that's all fine, but it can get kind of annoying and it drags out fights with other players because you'll just keep doing that. There doesn't seem to be any real way to break a combo, and it ends up becoming like sort of a who runs out of Cosmo first kind of battle, which isn't really fun. Another complaint that I might have with the gameplay, although for review purposes I'm calling it a complaint, I personally think it makes sense and I kind of like it in the prospect of the show, is the seventh sense mechanic. Because when you get enough energy, you can press a button and go into your 7th sense mode, which will increase your damage, and you can basically turn the tide of a fight, both against a player and the computer. It's actually kind of interesting, I think. And that can be seen as kind of cheap, especially when you're winning and then suddenly your opponent does the 7th sense, and then suddenly you've been defeated when you've had like half your HP left, or a little bit more depending on the skill of the other player. Against the computer, you can abuse it, obviously. Or really against anyone, you can abuse it. But overall, even with that stuff in mind, I still enjoy the gameplay. Early on, I wasn't actually aware of the dash behind mechanic that you'll see a few times during the gameplay footage. And you'll see that it's very similar to in use to a Naruto game. Obviously, they're not. The Saints are not using a substitute. They're just teleporting behind them. I personally think it would have been cool if they made that an attack instead of just making it a dodge. I think that'd be cool if that was an actual attack that would send your opponent behind, or send your opponent flying or something. I think that would have been a good way to use it. But alas, they didn't. Hopefully for Brave Soldiers 2, they will. But overall, the gameplay, I like it. The story, I think, is actually okay. It's broken up into 3 parts, very much like a Dragon Ball game. Whereas, you know, it would be like broken up between like Saiyan slash Frieza, and then Android slash Cell, and then the Majin Buu. This is the Sanctuary arc, the Poseidon arc, and the Hades arc. The Sanctuary arc, if you've played Sanctuary Battle, you've already experienced it. In terms of the presentation of the story, there aren't too many like actual cutscenes. It's done primarily through little dialogue boxes, and they do show stills from the anime, which the old TV series actually looks really good, and it's when they show the clips, it looks really nicely remastered. Obviously, when you get to Hades, it looks even nicer because it's a newer show with newer techniques. But the Sanctuary and Poseidon anime pictures that they show, they actually look really nice, and makes me wish that there's a Saint Seiya set of the series that would have that kind of quality, like the movies. The movies, as I mentioned before, also have that really good quality to the visual and the audio. In terms of the voice acting, it's the Masakazu Morita cast, or the OVA cast for the Bronze Saints and Gold Saints, as well as the Spectres and Hades. From what I can tell, the only returning cast from the TV show is the Sea Generals, the Sea Marinas, with the exception of, I think, Poseidon. I think he may have been replaced. I'm not sure. But, like, you know, Ryusei Nakao returns as Isaac. Hayami Sho returns as Bayan, Seahorse Bayan, and others. While I believe Sorrento and Kenon are actually replaced. So, excuse me, the majority of the Poseidon characters, with the exception of Kenon, Sorrento, I'm assuming, and I'm also assuming Poseidon, are replaced. The voice acting on its own, though, besides that, is actually, I think, decent. Masakazu Morita is really starting to kind of set in as, like, the definitive Seiya. Toru Furuya, the original voice actor, is also really good, though I'm getting so used to hearing him do, like, his Yamcha-esque voice for Seiya and Saint Seiya Omega. So I think Masakazu Morita probably fits better as a young Seiya. And, of course, with the OVA cast, this is their third game, so they've gotten used to they've had plenty of time to get used to their characters. The Sanctuary and Poseidon story modes are done pretty well. I feel like they're done pretty faithfully. It's the Hades arc that I feel like they kind of skimp a little bit. The story itself, that's a different subject entirely, but in terms of presentation, I feel like they kind of rushed through it a little bit. Probably because they had done that story before. I don't really know what their situation was like, but I feel like the Hades arc was probably the least impressive out of the other ones. Which, you know, the main one I was focusing on was probably the Poseidon one, which on its own is a condensed version of the Sanctuary, to be perfectly honest. But because the Poseidon one is the last of the original anime. That's where the series cut off, and that was the only storyline I wasn't entirely familiar with. I had experienced all of the Sanctuary through the anime and the game Sanctuary Battle, and Hades I was at least aware of through the game The Hades on the PS2. But in terms of the only one I wasn't really familiar with, it was Poseidon. I knew who Poseidon was, obviously, and there's a game regarding him in the Saint Seiya Omega universe for the PSP, but so the one that I was probably the most interested in was probably the Poseidon one, which that story I enjoyed. The netcode, from what I can tell, is okay. I've only played like 1 or 2 matches online, so I don't have enough to compare. It's okay. I'm not really one for competitive online play. I'm not really one for competitive play to begin with. But overall, it seemed okay. I didn't really notice any lag or anything. Let's see, what else? I'm kind of new to this new. I'm trying to make it sound as professional as possible without having my usual Tosuke style. I guess it doesn't really matter. But There is DLC. They give you a bunch of costumes, like the original colors for the final cloth for the Bronze Saints, the ones that are based off of the manga, the plain clothes, the training outfits for several characters, you know, different outfits for different characters, and they have one original color for one Gold Saint Capricorn Shura because everyone seems to universally hate his anime design. I personally think it's okay, but that's just me, and I just find it kind of funny how everyone seems to hate that design. That DLC in particular, I feel like it was more due to fan demand than actually trying to expand the color palette of the characters. Though I do hope rather that they do the original coloring for the other characters as well. I think that would be nice, even though it would make half of the Gold Saints blonde. The difficulty of this game, I would say, is about medium, I suppose. There are some cheap characters, like Shun is he's pretty tough because of his change. They circle around, they have a longer range. Hades has this one move that's just broken, and of course, unfortunately, Aurora Thunder Attack is no longer broken, but not really much we can do about that. There is one move that I find really, really broken, though. Stardust Revolution. You can use it with any of the Ares Gold Saints, including Ares Shion, both versions of Ares Shion. I guess I should mention that when this game came out in North America, they just straight up gave you Ares Shion, the gold cloth version. Like, it's not even like a first week bonus. Like, they just give it to you. If you look it up on PSN, it's Saint Seiya Brave Soldiers plus Ares Shion. And also Ares Mu. They all three of them have that move, and I imagine if they make a Brave Soldiers 2 with Omega or something, Ares Kiki will also have it. But that move's broken because you can't dodge it, from what I can tell. Not unless you do the behind the teleporting thing, but I feel like you'd have to time it perfectly every single time. I don't think you can guard against it because every opponent that I've used against it, they've never been able to guard against it. So I'm assuming it's broken. It's pretty busted. But as far as what the general public seems to think of this game, because as a Saint Seiya fan, I seem to kind of stress like, oh, you know, support the series so we can get more stuff. This game seems to be getting a bit of traffic. From what I can tell, reviews are generally negative. Though people have been rating it highly, giving it like 4 to 5 stars on the PlayStation Network. As far as I can tell, I gave it 5 stars. Actually, Viz Media has decided to print the entire manga digitally, which may have been due to the sales of this game, or maybe they were just saying that they would just because it was relevant. But honestly, I actually like this game. You know, I don't really have a problem with it. The reused assets and cheapness of some aspects aside, I actually really enjoy it. It's currently my go-to Saint Seiya game for, you know, just casually playing. It used to be Sanctuary Battle, but this one I really enjoy. It's a nice little fun game to play. You know, it'll last a while. Nick and AJ have both played it a fair amount. They seem to really enjoy it. So, safe to say, at least in my group, it seems like they enjoy it. It seems like a good game. I really like it. If I had to give it a grade, like a critique grade, probably a B. Like just a straight up B. Cause I don't feel like this game, I don't think is like the best thing ever that had with some. It's not like one of those games where it's just really, really good, but it just has one thing that just kind of lowers it a little bit to make it like an A- or something. Because to me, like, I just like the game. So like, I'd say probably a B or like a B+ or something. That's just what I think. But that's my review of Saint Seiya Brave Soldiers. I think it is the good, and you should definitely give it a try if you're a Saint Seiya fan. This is the first Saint Seiya game to be released in North America, so you won't have to import it if you're living in America. Of course, it's being released worldwide, so everyone at this point should be able to play it. I guess that's one interesting thing about Saint Seiya, that it's one of those franchises that's literally been released everywhere. Like, literally everywhere, like even in places you wouldn't think. But yeah, this is that was my review of Saint Seiya Brave Soldiers. Overall, good game. It does have some stuff that I think is kind of wrong with it. They reused assets, which is making me wonder if this was originally designed as Sanctuary Battle 2. But I also think that we're supposed to look at this game as if it was a brand new Saint Seiya game. Like, if they make a new one, I feel like it'll probably be Brave Soldiers 2. I don't think they're gonna completely redo a whole new game and start a brand new series fresh. But thanks for watching, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.